Guys and gals and non-binary pals, welcome to episode 38. We're gradually getting to 50. Still not by the end of the year, but gradually. A Popcast Movie Club. This time to discussing, I guess what is one of the weirdest films that I can think of, at least in terms of releases. In that it's a 1992 film that came out in 1993 and then got entered for Cannes after it had come out. Of course, I'm talking about Falling Down. Most notable for Frank Grimes. I mean, Michael Douglas. I'm your host and, I guess, other person to discuss it with in Ash. Because AJ over here... Oh wow, I actually pointed the correct way. My word. Was the one that selected it for us, and yeah, I do find it sort of a weird setup that this was released in February, March time of like '93, but was submitted for Cannes in June of '93. Completely the opposite of what it is now.
Yeah, I assumed this would be. I was somewhat hesitant to pick this one because, as we all know, we're at an age now where if there's one thing that does not seem to matter anymore in movie discourse, it's nuance. Which makes this a really fun movie to talk about with a lot of different groups of people. Who have one outlook, and that's about it. And yeah, but of course I say fun with about as much sarcasm as I can muster there.
Yeah,
it's very like I was thinking when we were talking about how I always figured I would do this as a versus at some point, but I never figured out which one to do it with. When you look at the discourse of it, I guess the closest thing would be Law Abiding Citizen, where people have some very interesting views about that movie, and and its protagonist slash antagonist.
Yeah.
And if you might be offended if he's ever called a protagonist and or an antagonist, you might think he's very much one and not the other. I mean, I think it's clear. I guess we're just gonna pull off the Band-Aid here. I think it's pretty clear he's an antagonist, right? But
yeah.
there's like I said, there's going to be nuance and there's going to be a gray area when discussing him as a character and his motivations and where he's coming from as the events of this movie unfold.
I'd say
because I think
he'd have to be the antagonist because you do see like I don't think it's equal amounts, but you do get like the other 30 to 40% of the film focusing on sort of the protagonist, if you will. You know, on his last day, Prendergast and all that. And he has his moments of sort of intrigue and like you don't know what's exactly going on. So there's a semi-grey area there. And then you have the ultimate grey area, which is the incompetence of other people.
Yeah, I was just getting ready to say whether or not you think Bill is a protagonist or an antagonist. With Prendergast, it feels like there's a pretty clear protagonist.
Yeah,
it's just a matter of how much you stick to the idea of a protagonist must have an antagonist and vice versa. Because the interesting thing about them is that they're kind of coming from the same place a little bit, where Bill has just apparently been laid off or fired at some point recently, in the recent present. We have Prendergast who's retiring, but it's kind of this same place of not really being of use to society anymore, as far as what whoever's above you thinks about you and your placement in
Hmm.
society. Because obviously there's a very toxic relationship going on here with Prendergast and his superior, and we get the idea, and we see how much of a douchebag the superior is, and how just shady he seems in so many ways. And the fact that whoever laid off Bill from work may not have been very different from that guy. But then it's how Prendergast and Bill reacted to being in this position is how they kind of became protagonist and antagonist to each other, which I always found to be a really interesting dynamic, especially since they don't meet until the very end.
Yeah, they come. I guess the closest they get to is the very start of the film when they're in the traffic jam,
Yeah,
in which they're probably like what 30 meters apart, maybe,
it seems pretty close.
because it's so many vehicles down. Um, and it does make you wonder as well. And I'll quickly go to Josie's first comment in chat. Is what's great about the film is you understand Douglas's motivations, even if they're to the irrational extreme, and his criticisms of society are completely valid. At the same time, I'm wondering, is he an actual like veteran that's suffering from PTSD? Because everything that happens within that first few minutes that leads him to getting out the car and just walking is sort of the start of the chain reaction. But it's everything. It's the kid in front looking sad. It's the kids on the bus being noisy. It's the idiots on their car phone complaining about random stuff. It's the woman doing her lipstick, sort of. I don't know if that's a callback to his mother or his ex wife or whatever. Um, but I'm just. Because it's never. The only bit that we sort of get a hint of it is the military stuff, but I wasn't sure whether that was like Bill's stuff as well as like the father's stuff that's just kept there. Because I didn't see many pictures that were like, I was expecting to see something like we saw in Ant-Man. It's like that's Michael Douglas de-age. It's like none of them look like Michael Douglas.
Yeah, because it is. There's definitely a line. There's definitely lines blurring everywhere between what the movie wants to show for character and what the movie wants to show for just sort of general commentary.
Mm-hmm.
Because because the thing is littered with social commentary. Whether it's extremely unsubtle, that's it's still. But I've always said like if you have a message that you're passionate about, I don't really care if a movie's unsubtle or not, as long as it works in the context. But yeah, because it does seem on the nose. Like once he kills Frederick Forrest, then he's running around in the fatigues, and and he runs into the stolen valor guy at one point, and just in general, all those glimpses we get of like the whole where it's almost like it's trying to take on a documentary feel when the camera just sort of lingers on like the homeless for periods of time, like for transition shots and to kind of establish the environment. With these little breaks in between him getting from place to place.
Well, the whole filming of that was complicated, from what I heard. That all this was being filmed in the middle of the LA riots of '92, the Rodney King situation.
That makes a
So,
lot of sense.
which complicated issues because, and which is I think is another novel aspect, sort of akin to some extent akin to what we've seen in like Baby Driver and whatever, where they try and the continuity of that car chase is somewhat similar to the continuity of the events of this film, in that they're literally the path that's sort of supposedly taken by defense, um, is pretty much the route that they film. Pretty much accurately as it, you go down from one bit to another bit, sort of thing. Although I've just realised, considering where we get to, like halfway through to the sort of first, turn up the heat bit at the little grocery shop, I'm pretty sure Douglas walks in completely the opposite direction, doesn't he?
I don't think I noticed that.
There was one big continuity thing I believe I was getting a bit disturbed by. Not that one. It's the bit when Barbara Hershey's like fringe goes from like that to that and then back to that, like within the well, I was like, that's the retake. It was like but like when Prendergast goes up the hill later on and like notices that that's where the car is and everything, it makes sense. But the guy walks off like, Bill sort of walks completely the opposite direction, not where the corner is. And of course, the other thing is, if Bill was willing to wait like 2 minutes, at least from what we can tell. Well, I guess it wouldn't be 2 minutes because the police would have been that quick. Maybe 5 or 10 minutes. He'd have been all right. I do like the irony though that once we get to him walking off and Prendergast checking on what's going on, the bike cop's bike falls on its side and somehow he doesn't know how to pick it up. And I'm like, is this his first day on the job? Does he not know how to ride a bike? In which case, how did he get the license?
It seems to be a running theme that the cops in this movie, with the exception of Prendergast, feel like parodies of TV and movie cops, and I can't tell if that's on purpose or not, because some of them feel very like over the top caricatures, but seemingly in a potentially intentional way.
Yeah, right.
Because like we were saying about how it feels kind of unsubtle, it does feel like it almost feels like it's intentionally over the top and unsubtle in the way RoboCop is in its satire a little bit, especially since we're dealing with the police force.
Yeah, even Rachel Tickerton playing Sandra Torres is stereotypical in a different reason, in that she's the sort of buddy cop that gets shot 2/3 of the way through, a la sort of Dirty Harry and whatever. She's a competent cop, but still falls into the typecasting to some extent.
Yeah, because the fact that like the whole thing is, you hear that he's going to be retiring today, and so as a moviegoer, our first thought is, oh, he might die. That makes him like, it's so clear that he might die, and then the other cops are telling him that the whole movie.
Yeah,
like like it's a running joke that he could die today because it's his last day. and that joke is perfectly capped off by the fact that he survives.
Yeah. And the cops that you think should be like, well, why didn't they get put on the list? Because to some extent, the body count that he does is relatively low. Because
Frederick Forrest, who plays the Nazi, is his first actual kill.
Yeah.
And the others might just be circumstantial. Are we counting the golf guy as a victim of his, or was that just circumstance?
he'd certainly he'd be up for manslaughter. I don't think it can actually be classified as murder, but it was his actions that led to the guy probably dying because his heart
Yeah,
medication was on the caddy truck that went in the lake.
yeah, because it feels like it would have probably been easy to go that route when he's already like firing a weapon on a golf course. It's like there could have been it would have been
Yeah,
easy to just roll that in.
it's just and the way it sort of is so well written by one time writer Ebby Rose Smith in that pretty much everything is like circumstantial. You know, gets into a fight at the grocery store, picks up the baseball bat. Baseball bat becomes a useful weapon against the hoodlums and whatever. Picks up their flick knife. Then the drive-by happens and picks up the Uzi and the weapons. Just everything escalates, even as much so as like when he gets the Chinese. I want to say Chinese rocket launcher because it's just like the one that's in the bloody deleted scenes of Die Hard with a Vengeance. um, he doesn't know how to do it, so some kid like tells him what to do because the kid saw it on a movie
Yeah.
or a TV show somewhere.
Yeah, I was gonna say with all of the very unsubtle commentary they're throwing in, might as well throw in a violence on TV commentary while we're at it. Why
Yeah,
not? It's the only thing that wasn't touched on yet.
use it all. Um, I do like the also vagueness of everything. Like we never find out what happened to Prendergast's kid. We just know the kid is dead.
I guess at the well, yeah, because at the end he talks about it being infant death syndrome, but then he says that she was 2 years old, so that doesn't like even line up.
Yeah,
And there's also the idea of one thing I've always wondered about is what's up with his wife, because for most of the movie it seems like she might have like a mental illness, and that's why she's so manic and why he's so easy on her and defensive of her. But then we get the moment at the end where he tells her off, and then it's like, oh wait, was she just annoying? Is that what it was? Because I mean, I don't know if this is the right way to say this, but I mean, you get serious mental illness vibes from the other phone calls from his wife. At least that's the vibe I've always gotten.
yeah. But we obviously get a lot of mental illness stuff. You get the various veterans, you know, hounding Bill for stuff at various points. Uh, on top of, you know, Bill may be some sort of veteran himself who just so happens to work, or worked, I should say, in the defense industry, making rockets. The one thing I did notice as well, what happened to Bill's protractor set? Because when it gets like opened up, when they go to his room in his mum's house, there is one bit missing, and it would be like the scalpel blade. So I'm like, why did that not come up?
Yeah, because I mean, while we're on the topic of his mom, um, I'm curious how people feel about the fact of the idea that there's a gray area about him. Like he comes from this sympathetic place
Mm-hmm.
where we can understand him just being a dude that was pushed too far, and this is basically his ultimate bad day. And it builds itself up as that for a long time. And a lot of people, I've seen a lot of people try to sell the movie that way, where they talk about it's a all it takes is one bad day being this movie's setup. But I feel like a lot of these people miss the parts of the movie where it's revealed that this was not a one-off. Like he's like he's like he was already unstable seemingly long before
Yeah.
this day.
Yeah, the
So
scene in the
and
home
like
video when the birthday and it's the rocking horse and like, put a kid on the horse! Like,
we only we only really focus on him watching that video more than we do the video, and that video makes me so uncomfortable. Like, and we're only getting glimpses of it,
mm-hmm.
and and obviously that goes back to like is it a mental illness thing or a veteran thing or whatever, but I do think not enough people seem to acknowledge the fact that he was unstable before today. That's a big
Mm-hmm.
factor in this movie, and it's introduced. Barbara Hershey brings up the restraining order very early in the movie.
Yeah,
It's not like
first 30
it's not like
minutes or
it's some
so.
big reveal.
Mm-hmm.
But I do still like that, even though that's the case. There's something about Bill's portrayal where you can still see like it still doesn't feel black and white completely. Like he's still reaching a breaking point is still relatable enough that he can do things even with us knowing of his unstable background, and it still gives us that vibe of I understand how he got here, at least to this particular
Yeah.
moment.
You can understand some of the frustrations at, like, price inflation. Um, at a small shop compared to, like, a bigger shop. But then, of course, that's because the smaller shop needs to make more profit because the big shop can afford to not make as much, so therefore, make it cheaper than the competition that can't afford to go that far. Which then revolves around into sort of passing through gang territory and whatever, um, and getting involved with that. And they didn't have to confront him like they did, and in essence, they got screwed for doing so. Um, and also hurting innocent people because the bullets in that drive-by went anywhere but Bill. Um, and I do wonder. I do wonder whether that kid actually gave an answer that put his hand up in the whammy burger. It's just never addressed.
It's interesting. It's surprising how many comedy cuts, like comedy edits, there are in this movie from scene to scene. Because it's well, the thing about it is the way they play that up, where it's like sometimes he's scary, sometimes we relate to him, sometimes the scene is funny. Like the situation, the whole whammy burger scene feels like it could be out of a really over the top comedy.
Yeah,
But then
especially the
like
whole look at the picture. Why does this not look
yeah,
like the picture?
or the golf scene where it's like when he goes off on golf for essentially being not just elitist but for something I you actually hear a lot today still, which is how much of a waste of resources golf courses are. And but at the same time, he gleefully watches somebody die in that scene, and because of the line, "Now you're gonna die in that stupid little hat," we're laughing with him. But then we'll turn around and have a moment where he's on the phone with Barbara Hershey, and dead serious, he'll say, in certain countries it's illegal to kill your wife if she insults you. And it's like, Jesus
Yeah,
Christ.
I now feel guilt for somehow laughing at this guy for shooting the
And
roof
when
out of a whammy burger by accident.
yeah, and when they're talking to his mom and his own mother describes him like he's a horror movie character and
Mm,
she's fucking terrified of him.
we shouldn't be in
And it's
here.
like
He doesn't
and
let
then
me
and
know.
then
He doesn't let me know about my granddaughter because he doesn't want her to exist in my eyes. Like what?
yeah, it's like this. Yeah, he's the main character, and we spend most of the movie with him. But the scariest stuff about him is off screen or just described to us, which is wild. Because I mean, I guess because it does give the audience more room to see a gray area. That most of his darkest parts are off screen. Because because we do have moments also when he he doesn't he kind of takes the John Deal playing the caretaker of the house with the family. It's like he takes them hostage, but he doesn't realize he's taken them hostage. He thinks
Yeah.
he kind of just thinks they're standing in the same place, not realizing he's intensely backed them into a corner.
Well, it's and that sort of that also crops up a lot because when it starts with the grocery store scene, the owner's like, just take the money, man, and he's like, I'm not trying to rob you. I'm just trying to get money so I can get 50 cents or I can call home. And he doesn't actually rob him. He at least at the start he does very minimal crimes. Um, he assaults the people that were going after him with the gang. It probably takes a turn when he shoots the guy in the leg, but it's not like he actually outright kills him. Um, he shows that compassion to the guy in the park by giving him his briefcase, except the briefcase has only got, lunch in it. Um, and I guess in some sort of moral thing, which might also play on his own homophobia, we see how he deals with what's his name?
Are you talking about Frederick Morris's character?
Yeah, Nick, the guy in the the military shop or whatever. Because
Yeah,
he's standing
because he
behind him, sort of keeps saying about how, oh, the gays all have their way with you, and he sort of says the line over and over again when more PTSD is going through Bill's head. So it's like, there seems to be sort of a fear of that because all of a sudden he responds with the flick knife and yoink, like Jason Bourne style, like.
yeah, because let's not forget when he goes in the convenience store before he does anything else, before he really commits a crime, he's super racist towards the guy.
Mm-hmm.
And and then it's like this interesting turn that the first person he kills is a Nazi. Because the thing about that's interesting is we talked about how the crimes sort of build and how first he destroys the store, then he wounds somebody without killing them, and this escalates until he finally kills somebody. And the fact that it escalates to this point so much, you would think when he finally kills somebody will be his sort of heel turn. Like when there's no more gray area, when it's like, oh, he's a full on villain now because he's now killed somebody. But the first person he kills, and is it the only person he kills outright, like up front with total intention,
Mm-hmm.
is a Nazi. Somebody who anybody would agree deserves it.
Yeah. And at the same time, you get it's not just racism. It's sort of trying to think. Uh, Undiversity. That's not even a word. Misdiversity within the police force. You know, Prendergast mistakes the cop with the store owner for being from the same area when one's Korean and one's Japanese. The Hispanic ones that are dealing with the gang stuff don't want the white person involved because they know what's best. Um, the cops refusing to go to um, Beth's place because she's already called twice in the same day because of the threats, even though by the third time you'd have thought, well, they've established that this guy is now probably a threat. Why aren't they actually taking action on it? And the sexism shown quite a lot towards Sandra, and the ageism shown towards Prendergast, and sort of the him not wanting to serve on the front line because it petrifies his wife too much, sort of thing. Because it's never really explained either what injury led to him sort of being a desk jockey for as long as he was either. But it's like everything is grey. Paint it grey.
Yeah, this is one of those times where I really love this movie growing up, but I kind of loved it on a surface level. But it's like as it's going on, it's like it's crazy how many layers there are in it, because it does seem like it's just one thing on the surface, and then everything you just went through is all in here like the whole time.
Even as
I
much
think
as the not economically viable man, as he's referred to in the comments, the little cameo from Von D. Curtis Hall.
Yep.
Uh, getting taken away by the police and pulling up sort of right next to where Foster's looking, and he's like, "Don't forget me." And then, and part of the time I don't forget him for the rest of the film, so I guess it worked. If it was,
Yeah, because you have moments like that that can be totally humanizing to Bill. Because obviously, what's interesting is by that point, I don't think we know that he's been laid off, so we don't realize just how, like, the reason the sight of that guy. Because for all we know, in that moment, he thinks that guy he looks down on the protester. But then as we go on, it's like, oh no, he was relating to him, and that's why he was fixated on him.
yeah, because it
But the thing
makes you
about
wonder whether he tried to get a loan but got rejected, possibly because of his mental health issues.
the thing about Bill also is, when you're trying to figure out if you how much you should side with him, if at all. Um, One consistent thing in Bill throughout this movie is hypocrisy. Like the whole setup of what he's doing, because whether it be like the gang members talking about, oh, you're on our territory because we tagged it, so this is our territory, and now we've made it this whatever. So one of the thing, and how this is kind of continuous. Um, and the guy that's pretending to be a veteran that he gives his briefcase to, where the guy starts asking him for money, and then the guy starts just straight up demanding shit from him. And so one of the things that's really pushing Bill here is the idea of people basically getting by thinking they can do whatever they want, how the
Mm-hmm.
rules don't apply to them. And that's exactly how Bill's going about this day. He thinks he can just start whipping out weapons and destroying stores and shooting up gang members. And even though this comes from a place we can understand, it still falls under that rule of you can't just do whatever the fuck you want, because that's not how society runs.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'd be worse off than we are, much worse off than we already
Yeah.
are. And I don't is there ever a moment that occurs to Bill? I don't think so. Except he has the one line at the very end where he realizes like I'm the bad guy, but that could just I'm trying to remember if that's just him really referring to the situation at hand, where he's the bad guy to his wife and child, his ex-wife and child, or if he's coming to the conclusion of, oh, I've been the bad guy all fucking day. If farther back, probably.
So much so that he realizes he can become the good guy, because if he gets shot and killed, the insurance goes to his family. Whatever insurance that he's got. For all we know, it could be $14. I don't know.
And so the question, I could see some people turning it around and saying, "Oh, that's redemption." And it's like, well, his how long, if not permanently, is his daughter going to be mentally fucked after today? I mean, yeah, leave her all the insurance money you want. His daughter's got a long way to go. Not to mention, not to mention if you know the the way Bill is, if that's hereditary, that's another thing entirely.
She becomes single white female.
It is funny to watch him in the scene with his wife at the end and see him on the other side of Fatal Attraction. I kind of get a kick out of that.
Yeah, and it's weird right at the very start with the whole the the traffic jam thing and the way it was panning round the cars. I was getting La La Land vibes. Which is props to Barchewak, the cinematographer. Okay, he dabbled as well in doing. I mean, I'm. Jeez. Looking at the list as what he directed: Romeo Must Die, Exit Wounds, Cradle to the
I,
Grave, Doom,
I was just,
Street
that's
Fighter: The
right.
Legend of Chun Li, Maximum Impact, and Dead Reckoning, whatever the hell that is. From the same
I forget.
guy that actually did like cinematography for The Verdict in Terms of Endearment and Prizzi's Honor. It was like, what happened to the wagon? And where did he fall off?
I was just gonna say when I hear I don't know why because I all of those obviously the bell started ringing, but the first thing that always comes to mind when I see his name is before you read the list, I was getting ready to say, isn't he the director of Exit Wounds?
Yeah. And, like. And to think, like, back in his days when he was doing just cinematography, his big thing probably after this was speed, which needed good cinematography. Um, and as I say, whoever like the production designers were to try and work out the best route possible. I don't know whether that was also the writer basically going, if I imagine this happening here and the person's going to be in Venice, what's basically as the crow flies that goes directly through that I can find a way to get into. In which case, was it a Wendy's or a Carl's Jr. or whatever, or a McDonald's that was being quote unquote used in the fast food segment? This needs to be like, like when people go around and look all the Ghostbusters locations in the center of New York. The same needs to be done for Falling Down. Like, Is it, you know, where are the places that happened? What's happened to them since? Because it's 30 years on. Put that on a Blu-ray, damn it.
Well, while we're on the topic of the whammy burger, there's a scene that's actually stuck out to me that feels very nerve-wracking and anxiety-inducing, but it's not a scene with Bill in it, and it's not a life or death scene. It's the scene where Prendergast is on the phone with his wife, and he's also on the phone with his partner who's at the Whammy Burger, and she's being pushed to do what she needs to do, and he's having to go back and forth between talking to her and talking to his wife. There's so much anxiety in that scene from Prendergast's perspective. And I love the way that whole scene is edited also, where it uses like where it's not just using his personal life for like, the character aspect, or to put his whole character in perspective or whatever, but to add tension to this scene that didn't necessarily ask for it, but it shows the time crunch factor of it,
Yeah.
and the fact that there is, this is still like a constant thing because he's constantly moving. But to use that along with the wife and make this actually really intense scene that has nothing to do with the action of the movie
Yeah.
is a scene that I actually really love, and how effective it is, how unexpectedly effective it is.
It's sort of the first bit as well where Prendergast is sort of beginning to turn the dial on his wife. Like, rather than being polite, that's when he starts being like, look, don't worry, I'll be home. We can sort it out, sort of thing. It's only the next time when he's more stern and like, you know, leave the skin on the chicken, damn it. Um, it's that where he sort of, he begins to transition on that, and at that point, that's when you sort of begin to realize he isn't retiring on his terms, and it's only by the end when we basically find out he was only doing it for his wife, basically, because the lake is just muddy sand. And there's London Bridge because somebody was an idiot. And didn't think it through. Um, it does make me wonder as well, though, how much the defense uh, number plate goes for now, if it does. Um, Transitioning through to that. But yeah, it's like there's a lot of very good work, both acting and production, cinematography. Um, I guess as well costume stuff, because obviously the look of the look of Douglas's defense has sort of become iconic since, to some extent. I mean, so much so that the first reference I think I saw of it anywhere, other than the Frank Grimes bit, is Tony Hawk's American Wasteland on the PS2. The first level was supposed to be set in LA, and you need to get through to another bit, but there's a bunch of no, the bunch of protesters bit is with like some weird Godzilla head that goes wrong and practically supposedly eats the person up. But there is a bit where there's like a building site there beforehand. I think it's the first bit, and all of a sudden, this guy in a white shirt and black trousers and a black tie comes through with a bag, randomly gets a rocket launcher and blows up the construction site. Because it was part of a time in the game when they were sort of like doing sort of destruction bits, because the previous one, Fug 2, had sort of jackass stuff and had like lots of bits where once an area or something got destroyed, it obviously changed the layout of the area that you skated, and that's what they. So their nod to it was basically have not defense, but clearly defense. Do sort of the same thing in their game. So obviously left a mark on them. This would have been what, 10, 12 years afterwards, depending when they programmed it for coming out in like '06, probably. And of course, Frank Grimes is obviously the closest because of his office work, and if anything, Grimes is more like the idealistic version that Douglas would have been if you're trying to empathize with him. To some extent, I would say, because everything with Grimes is about ineptitude of other people, which you can understand him getting angry at. Except, Grimes doesn't kill people or maim people or make sure that, Montgomery Burns isn't having a heart attack because he shot his golf cart in the lake. So it's proof you can do a safe for work version of Falling Down, that Frank Grimes episode, to some extent. But also, every time I see him, I now sadly think of I don't want to say sadly, but I think of Suburbicon, because I feel that's where they got the inspiration for Damon's sort of look in that.
I don't know if that ever occurred to me, and I'm always the first person to praise Suburbicon, and I don't think that ever occurred to me till just now.
Then again, considering Suburbicon is 50s sort of 60s set, it sort of fits more.
As far as this movie having an iconic status, I love how I discovered it, which was it was basically when I was going to Hollywood Video like every other day, and I was watching one of Douglas's '90s movies, like probably The Game or like A Perfect Murder or something.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad was watching, and just offhand he said, "Next time you go to the video store, you should get Falling Down." And he didn't tell me anything else. He only told me the title and that it was a Michael Douglas movie. And so the movie snuck up on me. First of all, I just knew by the cover it was not what I was expecting. Like, I just kind of, like, when you think of '90s Michael Douglas, usually one type of movie kind of comes to mind. And this was not at all what I thought it was based on the title and that it was a '90s movie with him in it. And I love the way that I think my dad knowingly let it sneak up on me. I think he knowingly didn't tell me anything except, oh, if you want another Michael Douglas movie, you should get Falling Down, and leaving it at that. And I'm so glad that's how I saw it, like completely blind the first time.
Yeah. Thing is, this also makes me wonder where it all went, I guess, sort of wrong to a limited extent with Schumacher, because this was probably the last of his, to some extent, peak, I would say. Because, I didn't mind Batman Forever, but I know there's people that don't like it. Batman and Robin sort of, like, went bad, and there's a lot of sort of... It's weird because, like, in the middle of, like, all these things like Phone Booth and Bad Company and all that, he does, like, some small sort of drama like Veronica Guerin. but then follows it up
Yeah.
with whatever the hell that Phantom of the Opera was.
Yeah, I was gonna say his Colin Farrell run was really good. Like
Mm-hmm.
with I think with Tigerland, I think he's basically credited with discovering Colin Farrell, or at least getting him jump started.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think Phone Booth was right after, and he has like a small part in Veronica Guerrero, but I remember Tigerland and Phone Booth I think were pretty close together, weren't they? And that was like Phone Booth especially was like right in the middle of him just skyrocketing.
Yeah. Tigerland was 2000 and Phone Booth was 2002. I also didn't know that Schumacher was apparently listed as a costume designer on Sleeper, Woody Allen's film.
That's random.
It's just, yeah, it's there. You know,
I rem-
costume designer on a lot of things before he sort of really jumped into sort of writing like Sparkle and Car Wash and The Wiz. Before directorial debuting with The Incredible Shrinking Woman.
yeah, I remember I remember actually, I don't, it wasn't like extremely acclaimed or anything, but I remember liking Flawless with De Niro and Philip Seymour Hoffman. Was that after his Batman run?
Yeah, same
Yeah.
year as 8mm. The only film he wrote, directed, and produced.
8mm is wild. I kind of love that movie. That movie's fucking insane, and I highly recommend it.
Oh, you know, the last film he ever did was Trespass with
Oh wow.
Kidman and Cage. Well, that was his last directorial movie job.
I
Anyway, he did a couple of episodes of the, I don't know which season of House of Cards. I had a thought early on, if not like the pilot and like episode two
I,
probably of season one.
I am not kidding when I say I always forget that Trespass exists, and I can see it on my shelf from where I'm sitting.
It's just it's so not what you expect from Cage.
But yeah, it was like just a home invasion thing, wasn't it?
To some extent, yeah. And then there was also that what was it 12? That had 50 Cent in. I don't want to
Oh
say.
yeah, yeah.
I think stuff like Phone Booth or Veronica Guerin is like some of his best stuff. But Falling Down's obviously up there as well in terms of. He also obviously had that spell of doing a couple of the John Grisham things because he did Client and Time to Kill within a couple of years of each other. Soon after Falling Down.
Yeah, because the client, I believe, is what fell between Falling Down and Batman Forever. Like it
Mm-hmm.
was Falling Down, the client, and Batman Forever were all consecutive.
Followed by Time to Kill. And then Batman and Robin. Well,
Yeah,
crap. Um,
but
but
yeah, that's what I was saying when I picked this one was I've always found him to be really underrated, and I think that solely falls on his Batman runs, but specifically Batman and Robin. Because when you look at Batman and Robin, that's not the kind of director Joel Schumacher is. I don't know what
yeah,
the hell Batman and Robin is, but it's not. It doesn't feel like him.
just I don't know. Maybe he was just trying to sort of. He felt like he wanted to do something more akin to maybe the Adam West things because of the campness and the sort of bad like, writing of it. If it
I
was
was gonna,
intended, maybe. I'm trying to explain that.
well, it could also. I don't really know enough about those movies' productions, but the fact that they are so far away from the rest of the stuff he's made, um, it does make you wonder, like how much of it was directed by Warner Brothers rather than him.
But yeah.
And I really hate what it's done to his reputation because he's got a really good line. Obviously, I love his the Lost Boys. Obviously, I'm one of those people where the Lost Boys is like inherently a part of me. And there's another Joel Schumacher movie in this area we haven't mentioned yet that will be showing up on the channel in October.
Mm-hmm.
That was yeah.
We'll get
It
to
might it
that.
might be one of the only ones. It might be one of the only ones we haven't mentioned.
Yeah. Was it on purpose? And what is the answer? Yes. Um. Uh. Yeah, I've just been informed by Bry that the thumbnail is wrong. In my hurry to get this up, I managed to put the old thumbnail on. So now, if it uploads, I can press save. The thumbnail's correct. But thanks for letting me know, Bry. As I go to more stuff from Josie and the rest of the chat, Josie says Joker probably took inspiration from this. I mean, to some extent, it's certainly you can see it's a different. It's the probably one of the ways that to do a different Joker origin story. It makes sense for sort of him to have the sort of bad day that gets worse and worse and worse. Uh, Film was nominated for Palme d'Or, but losing out to the co-winners that year being Farewell My Concubine and The Piano. Jane Campion's at it again. Uh, the scene where Defense basically terrorizes McDonald's reminded me of the "we stopped serving breakfast at 11" scene in Big Daddy. Imagine if Adam Sandler and Michael Douglas were in line at McDonald's. Douglas would cut in front. I d- he probably would only cut in front if he was uh, prompted. Because he gets into the queue for that bus, but then because everybody's shoving into him, he changes his mind. So maybe it'd be the other way around. And then Douglas would get the shotgun out and go crazy.
Yeah, because like we were saying, the thing about Bill is that he thinks he's a rule follower and wants to appear to be a rule follower, but he doesn't seem to be aware of he seems to have no awareness of the irony of his actions.
Uh, Douglas considers this the favourite performance of all the movies he's been in, and at the time of its release, even Kirk considered it to be Michael's best performance. What did Kirk say
It's
afterwards? Wall Street 2, Money Never Sleeps? Oh, no.
it's definitely. I mean, it's a cop out because it's his Oscar winning part, but you can't deny the first Wall Street. But this is I'd say this is my favorite performance of his, probably. But Gordon Gekko is always going to be like right there. The first Wall Street's Gordon Gekko before they really pussified him in the
Yeah.
sequel.
Uh, oh, God, there's an irony here. Detective Brian says he can't translate for Mr. Lee because he's Japanese and Mr. Lee is Korean. In real life, Steve Park, who played the detective, is South Korean. And Mr. Lee, played by Michael Paul Chan, is Chinese. I think they would have flipped probably the roles around 30 years on. The man who's yelling about being not economically viable is wearing the same clothes as Foster. Even the tie pattern's the same. I never noticed the tie pattern. That's probably again why he has so much kinship with him.
It is, yeah, it's funny how him wearing the exact same tie is about as unsubtle as it gets, yet we didn't notice.
Yeah,
That's pretty impressive.
I also didn't realize the opening sequence is a direct homage to Fellini's 8.5, and that opening.
Yeah. Yeah, what one of the I think the only thing we didn't mention in that scene that's like driving him to the brink is the fly. I get the fly being the straw that broke the camel's back.
I like the fact his car is that bad. He tries and winds down the window, and it is broken. What?
There, there is an alternate universe where this movie plays out exactly the same way and it's a comedy. In another universe.
Movie was being shot in locations in Linwood, California when the riots began. By the end of April, the riots were sufficiently disruptive to force filming to stop early that day. Film crews produced more footage inside of Warner Brothers studio in Burbank as the riots continued, and by May the 4th, when the crew intended to resume in Pasadena, initial requests to do so were denied, causing delays. Now, there we go. The Whammy Burger was filmed in a restaurant called Angelo's Burgers, located in Linwood, and was dressed up to look like the fictional Whammy Burger. In the scene in which the drive-by car crashes, there's a mural of a Hispanic depiction of Jesus on the wall. The same mural was also in Colors from '88, also starring Duvall as an LAPD cop. In the scene in which the police officer, played by Sean Penn, spray paints a kid's face. In one scene, Defend says golf course is a waste of space and golf's for old men with nothing better to do. The irony is that's what Michael Douglas does now. Oh, and Josie says that basically he had the opportunity to give up one of the bags to the bum and gives up his old life by giving up the briefcase. I didn't realise that was the symbolism. Him leaving his old life behind. That, or he
Yeah,
really hates his mum's lunch.
well, there's also the whole idea of a guy that's supposedly in a bad position and is starving, and you give him food and he doesn't want it. There doubly they touch on that because he says that he needs money because he's starving while he's eating something.
Yeah. And also, I drove all the way here. Where's your driving license? Oh, I ain't got a driving license. You drove here without a driving license. Like, everything that guy does is just like, yeah, I found the hole in your argument. It's about the size of the London Eye, but wow, this is an interesting list. So the people considered to be Bill Foster, Defends, whatever you want to call him: Nicholson, Ed Harris, De Niro, Alec Baldwin, Jeff Bridges, Nick Nolte, Mel Gibson, Michael Keaton. God, would that and Pacific Heights would have been like a year apart?
3 years.
Okay. Robin Williams, years before 1 Hour Photo. Harrison Ford, Dustin Hoffman, and Al Pacino.
See, a lot of those people. You remember uh, Stephen King's criticism of casting Nicholson as Jack Torrance in The Shining because he has to start off as somebody that seems normal and then goes crazy.
Yeah.
The problem is Nicholson always seemed crazy. I feel like a lot of them wouldn't have been able to play Bill to the fullest effect because of that.
Yeah.
Like I feel like when Douglas played Bill in 1993, that had to throw people off. I know Gordon Gekko's ruthless in his own way, but the way Gordon Gekko's ruthless and the way Bill acts are two totally different things.
Yeah. The Simpsons episode was entitled Homer's Enemy from '97. And basically, the Frank Grimes design came from Douglas's character. The idea being both men were fed up and impatient with society. Foster's broken right spectacle is a reference to straw dogs. Something was going in the back of my head saying I've seen that before. Duvall, Forrest, and James Keane all appeared in Apocalypse Now together.
Yeah.
Now I'm trying to work out if that's a nod. Bill Foster appears in Ant-Man and the Wasp. Or a character named Bill Foster appears alongside
Oh yeah,
Douglas's Hank
yeah.
Pym.
I think it's Lawrence Fishburne's character.
I'm trying to remember. Haven't seen that, since it first came out 5-6 years ago.
I think if you go back to when I reviewed Ant-Man and the Wasp when it came out, I might bring that up in the video, actually.
uh, Duvall and Forrest also previously appeared together in The Conversation, The Stone Boy, and Lonesome Dove. Not just Apocalypse Now. Fun fact, Douglas and his wife, Catherine Zeta-Jones, have the same birthday, September 25th, both Libras. Part of me is wondering whether he just did that on purpose. Did he make the wedding day September 25th so they'd just get presents one day? In the late 60s, Douglas shared a New York apartment with Danny DeVito at 338 West 89th Street in Manhattan. Hell yeah. That's I guess that's the Batman degrees of separation. Joel Schumacher to Michael Douglas to Danny DeVito to Penguin. It's all connected. As of 2021, I'm trying to work out whether we can say as of 2023. Douglas, Clooney, and Olivier are the only three people to win Academy Awards for both Best Picture and Best Actor. I think that's right.
That sounds
I
right.
think we can say as of 2023. Somebody hasn't updated the IMDb trivia page. Make it a 4, so it's ready for next year.
Well, oh yeah, okay, we're just talking actors, I assume, because McDormand just did it. But
Yeah,
I'm assuming we're talking male actors.
and of course Olivier showed off because he won his simultaneously for the same film.
Yeah, just like McDormand.
Douglas and the China Syndrome co-stars Jane Fonda and Jack Lemmon have all won Academy Awards for leading roles. Douglas won for Wall Street, Fonda for Clute, and Lemmon for Save the Tigger. That'd be more entertaining.
Are we ignoring Coming Home as well?
I
For
guess.
Fonda? She has two.
Douglas was named Mobile Man of the Month when he worked at a gas station at age 20. That's a name for a movie. What, Mobile Man of the Month? Can we sign that off? Are Mobile gonna
I've
allow
no,
it? I'm getting the word. Hell no. Okay. I mean, we've had plenty Man of the Years in various shape or forms. I don't think we need Man of the Month. Duvall watched. Some of these are random. Duvall watched Broken Tail with George W. Bush in a special screening at the White House in 2006. What one was Broken Trail? I don't even remember that.
I want to say it's connected to Lonesome Dove in some way. They, I've seen both of their covers and they look very similar.
With the death of Rosemary Murphy on July the 5th, 2013, Duvall's the last surviving credited adult cast member of To Kill a Mockingbird. Didn't realise that, blimey. Josie asked for our favourite lines from the film.
Well, I mean, the one that the first one that always comes to mind when I think of the movie is "Now You're Gonna Die Wearing That Stupid Little Hat." But I'm trying to think of a more profound one.
The one that I sort of like to some extent is when when the gang do the drive-by that fails and they crash, which sort of feels akin to sort of that bit in The Man with the Golden Gun when the gun isn't right, and he basically says to them, "You missed," and then picks up the Uzi. I guess goes to shoot him in the foot, but it hits the rocker plate or whatever on the edge of the car, and he goes, "Oh, I missed too." And then it's like transitions to he's making sure he isn't gonna miss. You're done, son. Your ankle is gone. Duvall's favorite city is Buenos Aires. He's an avid tango dancer. Why didn't we have him in
Like,
that thing with Jennifer Lopez then instead of Richard Gere?
he might have been making Assassination Tango around that same time.
Duvall played ancestor Robert E. Lee in Gods and Generals when Martin Sheen was unable to reprise the role due to his commitment to the West Wing. The role of Robert E. Lee was originally played by Sheen in Gettysburg, and again, more Apocalypse Now links. Oh, Josie's got the game. It's a defense face-off. So, how would defense do against Joaquin Phoenix's Joker?
Fleck has a higher body count.
Yeah.
Arthur Fleck has a bit more of an innocent background because potentially Bill's background's kind of vague, but we already know that he's been violent before the events of the movie, which we can't really say about Arthur.
Yeah. I'd probably give the edge to defense on that one. I'd say this one's relatively easy. Defense versus Patrick Bateman.
Well, this begs the question of which route you take as far as American Psycho's ending. Are you, if you're somebody that thinks Patrick Bateman killed all those people, and if you're somebody that thinks he didn't?
Yeah, true.
If he did kill all those people, I'm trying to think. Yeah, Patrick Bateman has a gun at one point at the end. So if Patrick Bateman really did kill all those people, Bill doesn't stand a chance.
Yeah,
If Patrick Bateman
my
is only
glass of blood is half full rather than half empty. So I would say probably Bateman because I feel he's got enough charm to sort of
well,
distract the friends enough.
but Patrick Bateman's also the kind of guy that would have like Patrick Bateman is like a rich asshole in kind of this powerful position, and is just a guy like Patrick Bateman existing enough to make Bill go off. Like just with Patrick Bateman's position and status in life, Bill's gonna want to maybe come after him.
Yeah. And then finally on the defense front, defense or Gordon Gecko.
Gordon Gecko's all talk.
Yeah.
Gordon Gecko's very good at talking, but that's all he does. So
Actions is not his strong point. He'd be like the father of the caretaker. He'd just be like, "Take me with you, save my family."
and like I was saying about Patrick Bateman, Gordon Gecko's somebody rich and powerful. Somebody where if Bill had the chance to be face to face with him, Bill would probably be glad to take him out.
And we've also got a Duvall Douglas movie face off. So do we go with Coma or THX 1138? I would say 1138.
Yeah, it's more cerebral,
Yeah,
but I like the suspense factor in Coma. Like Coma is more of my kind of movie, like the kind of movie I'm kind of more attracted to. But I would say I probably like technically admire 1138 more. Like if I were to have to choose between the two of what I'm the most likely to watch, like next between the two, I would Coma is something I'd probably go back to first, but just for fun. But
yeah.
that one's hard actually.
The Apostle or the Game? I would say easily the Game.
Right now, I'm gonna say the Apostle because I'm not the biggest fan of the game, but I've always been meaning to rewatch the game because I was still in my teens when I saw the game, which means I probably wasn't really grasping it.
Yeah.
I I remember being annoyed with it. Um, so I feel like if I watch the game now, it'd be a different experience. Yet for some reason, I've been planning to rewatch the game for like a decade, and I just haven't gotten around to it. Which means I will probably just get the Criterion at some point, and then that'll be my rewatch. But I actually really like the Apostle. It's mainly for his performance is basically the show, but
Mm-hmm.
that takes it a long way.
Yeah. Tender Mercies or War of the Roses?
Well, that's tough because Tender Mercies is great,
Mm-hmm.
and Tender Mercies is also at, Tender Mercies is as described. It's very tender. um, but with War of the Roses, like my favorite genre is black comedy, and that movie stays a comedy while getting super fucking dark, which is like the exact recipe I want in a movie. So That's just a what are you in the mood for question. I feel like that's kind of impossible to
Yeah,
answer.
I'd probably just edge it to War of the Roses at the minute, but I probably need to watch Tender Mercies again because that's been a one I haven't seen in a while. Uh, Days of Thunder or Lonesome Dove?
I have never watched Lonesome Dove, and I really don't like Days of Thunder. So I might just have to abstain from that.
Oh, um, Days of Thunder has like the cheese going for it. That's a good thing, maybe.
It's also got Days. I will say Days of Thunder has a stellar cast. I have no idea how that cast ended up in that movie, but
Yeah, it's. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to see what year that came out.
I think 90.
No, I don't see it there. That now confuses me. Lonesome Dove.
Or were you asking when Lonesome Dove came out?
Yeah.
Well, that I have no idea.
Oh, that's why I can't find it in the right place. It was uh, it was like a TV
It's under
movie thing.
TV.
It was like a mini series thing. That's why I'm confused. Unless it. Hang on. Lonesome Dove mini series. I'm just trying to find it out because like I don't see it in anywhere. Oh, okay, there we go. Um, the Paper or the Wonder Boys? Oh,
Wonder. I love Wonder Boys actually. I feel like Curtis Hanson was one of the most diverse directors ever, and just throwing that out there. Um, and I actually just rewatched it like a year or two ago, and I love Wonder Boys. And the paper is fine. It's another one I probably saw too young to really grasp it, but and now I'm more into journalism movies now than I was then, so the paper might hit different now, but um, I loved Wonder Boy, so I would say that pretty quickly.
yeah. I would just edge it as well to Wonder Boys because that's got a lot of sort of. I guess it's slightly sort of my comedy. Although Paper is pretty strong for what was sort of the weird Ron Howard film, following up from like all the other stuff. You know, right between Far and Away and Apollo 13. So, and then Deep Impact or Basic Instinct.
Basic Instinct. I like a good disaster movie. I love a 90s thriller significantly more.
Yeah, Paul Verhoeven at it again.
Yeah.
Uh, Falling Down was released on the same day as Sam Raimi's Army of Darkness. and Robert Rodriguez is El Mariachi, who, by the way, has another Spy Kids film coming out this week. Oh no. I do find it funny though that Falling Down did get 2 weeks at the top of the charts in America, only to be usurped by both Fire in the Sky at number 2 and one I wasn't even aware of because over here it's like never shown anywhere. And considering it only had 3 weeks in the box office, at least according to the listings that I saw, must have not had much traction in America either. Chris Rock CB4.
Oh, wow.
Just randomly. Trying to see what else came, where they positioned that week. Falling Down was number 1. El Mariachi was number 16. What was it? Army of Darkness didn't even. No, Army of Darkness was the week before, but was in around the same time. And also, randomly, 2 theaters had a special edition version of The Abyss. That's randomly there at number 19 out of 19. But it's there. Oh, and I see. I thought that was Lethal Weapon 1, and then it said Loaded Weapon 1. Because I forgot it was before they actually decided to put National Lampoons on it to make sure that people afterwards know it's a comedy. Brian makes a good point. I don't get it why fast food restaurants start lunch at 11 or 11:30 in the morning. The best thing I did, and I've done a couple of times, but only a couple of times, is do the whole brunch deal. Order something from the breakfast menu right before it gets to the crossover point, and then just go back and order from the lunch/dinner menu, and then have both at the same time. I'm literally that French guy in the Simpsons episode. It's not quite breakfast, it's not quite lunch, but it comes with pancakes. So yes. Bry also mentions, I've seen the game to see if I was going to get a Criterion Blu-ray of it, but I wasn't a fan of it. So, in terms of final thoughts, yeah, it was really nice to see this again. One that sort of overshadowed, I'd say, in terms of like what Douglas is probably more known for, being sort of Basic Instinct and Gordon Gekko and everything, Wall Street and everything. So it's and full credit to Duvall as well. He does really well in the sort of the protagonist role, as we discussed it earlier. Yeah, I think it's one that I'll certainly go back to again every so often, every couple of years. Probably find something else that I didn't even notice again. On another watch. Probably something to do with the briefcase that I'll notice. More continuity errors, like the Fringe. Oh, and by the way, in case you're wondering, no, the haircut wasn't intended. I just needed to get it off because it was getting hot on it. I mean, look, I ain't got the crack in the glass. It can't be true. I'm not cosplaying. Anyway, AJ, your final thoughts?
Yeah, I loved it the first time I saw it when I was younger, and then like we were talking, I love it as a thriller by itself. And then as you get older, you can see it as like the character study that it is on top of being a great thriller. And then the more you go back to it, the more it has like so many layers to peel back. Like I said, it might sound weird to say because of how unsubtle a lot of them are, but like we were saying, even when it's being unsubtle, there's still somehow things that can kind of just slip under the radar, details that can slip under the radar. And yeah, this is one that I'll always come back to, and like just especially as just a fan of thrillers in general, it'll be like when you say the whole thing of you went for this, but you stayed for this. It's like I'll always go because it's a thriller, and then I'll stay for any other thing else that it's got up its sleeve. And like I was saying, even with Gordon Gekko in the mix, this is probably my favorite Douglas performance, and that's a long list of pretty great performances. So yeah,
Trying to work out, or not work out, try and see if Duvall's actually doing anything. Is
he
there any
was
upcoming projects?
the last I heard he was supposed to be doing that movie where he's like an incarcerated killer or something, and the police like go to him to solve a crime or something. I don't know if that ever got filmed or if it was just announced, but I just remember being happy because he's like in his 90s now, and like if he was still getting lead parts, that would be amazing.
uh, I'm liking the fact that it says, won one Oscar, but then in terms of other awards, 60 wins from 66 nominations, which is pretty good. Um, right, so apparently it's called The Plowman in pre-production. I'm trying to see if anybody. So I'm looking at like Michael Douglas's next one, and it's sort of looking like it might be a straight to video style thing. Doesn't look exceptional. Oh, it's it's co-written and directed by Ed Harris
Hmm.
with Garrett Hedlund.
That could be promising because Ed Harris is a pretty strong director with Pollock and Appaloosa.
Story of the strange friendship between a haunted young deputy sheriff and a notorious old murderer that turns both their worlds upside down.
That sounds cool.
Although with the way the strike
I'd
is
be
going, the pre-production will be until 2028.
Jesus Christ.
In which case he might beat Christopher Plummer's record for oldest nominee. Although I think he would anyway if it comes out in the next couple of years, because I think Plummer was like 91, and from what I just saw, I think he was born in 31 Duvall, so he'd be 92 or 93, depending when it had happened. So make it happen, people. So, the thing I need to mention is what we're doing for the month of October in terms of movie club, because nobody's picking anything. Well, no, we've picked our list. So this is still canon to like the numbering system, but it's not sort of selected entirely by you. All three of us have made our selection for horror themed, I guess, antics and exploits. Mine was the most problematic one because all of mine I want Owen to be around, and with him not being around, I can't do it. So I'm just gonna have to do sort of. There's gonna be a bit where I'm just gonna do horror films over and over again. Just horror films in February, yeah. So in terms of something that I don't think it's adamant that Owen misses, but something that I've seen recently because it was on TV, uh, and also got because it was like dirt cheap on Amazon Video to buy. Luckily, from 1972, my pick leading us off is Horror Express with the one-time reunion of Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing, and Telly Savalas, but not necessarily in that order. We might as well go through so you know what's coming as well. For the middle of October, we go to AJ's pick, which is frightening. Literally, because it's the Frighteners. And then, to whet your appetite, when we actually get to sort of the season, the title is appropriate. Because we're going to cover Trick or Treat. Or Trick or Treat. However they want to stylize it. It's like, it's not X, it's R. So that's your lot. Also, as a programming note, because AEW is having another pay-per-view, which if they're going to have monthly pay-per-views as rumoured, dear God, we'll have to go to like the other week so we don't clash with it. We'll stall a week. It'll be October the 2nd for Movie Club, with the Q&A following the following day on the 3rd of October. But I'll mention all that tomorrow as well.
Oh, I guess we need to. I would have thought Owen mentioned this. Actually, the Q&As are going to go on hiatus for October,
Oh, okay.
so we'll pick Q&As back up in November.
All right. So that's your last one. Your last one tomorrow. So make all the questions good. If not, bank them up and save them for November. Although at the same time, I can't. If that's the case, I'm going to have to talk about it tomorrow because I won't remember when we get to the awards thing. The big news in the UK about the Oscars. History being made for the first time in years. But we'll get to that. Obviously, we'll have your stuff as well. Favourite fridge scenes. Or something like that. Along all that. So, in terms of the other stuff, my bonus Isaac Apple Dumpling Day run, because these runs get weirder and weirder, is up now for you to catch up on. I've also got my other archive of Snack Stash and Gaming with Ash stuff. AJ's got a plethora of stuff still to come for the next 5-6 weeks in terms of all sorts of juicy content, be it review versus retrospect, all that sort of thing. So you're covered, don't worry. You can find, in terms of the socials, you can find me on Twitter at AshIsMyNameUK or X. Considering how apparently like 69% of America still call it Twitter, I'm sort of going to start putting the foot down and not call it X. If the majority don't want to ignore the letter that's flashing and causing epileptic seizures for the old people opposite the building in San Francisco, then we'll call it Twitter. Owen can be found at Sir Owen Disney and the channel at Popcast Network. AJ cannot be found on social media, and just like Keith Richards, cannot be killed by conventional weapons. But if you do want to get in touch with him, Oh God, lights out's happening. I don't mean the game from like Tiger Electronics. Um, Alright, that caught me off guard. If you do want to get in touch with him, leave some comments on the YouTube. He might get round to looking at them in another video somewhere down the line. So, thank you to Josie, thank you to Bry, thank you to everyone else that was also lurking and whatever. I saw the viewers pop up and down in numbers. With that being said, thank you for watching and listening, everybody. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And Craig approves.